With more and more people now, obviously, in the modern age, moving into digital sponsorship, why is the service that Hookit provides important, Luke?
The service that Hookit provides has become increasingly important really over the last 5 to 10 years. And we see a lot of businesses out there in the marketplace, a lot of marketeers more reliant on data and analytics. And that's become a real staple of most other parts of the marketing mix away from sponsorship. And sponsorship really hasn't gone on that journey as much. I think, for example, that we're heading for now 50 billion connection points between fans and brands and their sports partners. And I think what we're really about putting together for marketeers is giving them the ability to be able to look at that information in real time and make really performance-based decisions.
Do you think this is something that companies are kind of constantly looking for more? They're coming to you needing that help in terms of defining how much value they're getting from those sponsorships?
Businesses are looking for more quantifiable insight and data around what they achieve on social through their sponsorships and partnerships. I think gone are the days where just knowing the reach of something on social or just knowing how many impressions a campaign achieved are sufficient. Most marketing executives will be asked by their management to produce something that shows a euro value or dollar value sort of ROI. And I think therefore you mentioned sort of logo slapping. I think in a climate where that only has a limited impact nowadays, and often it's about knowing which audiences to target and which audiences to engage with via the right partnerships, being able to know both what your current portfolio creates in value for you, as well as being able to know what your best next partnership might be, can only serve to help marketeers.
When it comes to sponsorships in the past couple of months, obviously we've been going through the coronavirus pandemic, and social media has really come to the forefront even more so than before, as it's been the only way that brands and leagues and athletes have been able to interact with their fans. I mean, how do you think the initial coping was in terms of having to adapt that strategy?
I think primarily what I would say is that for many people, both on a personal level and on a professional level, this has been an incredibly tough time and an incredibly tough thing to experience. From the data that we've looked at around the pandemic, in that first month, sort of mid-March to mid-April, there was a 48% drop in the number of posts shared on social by athletes, teams and leagues, and the teams and leagues being the primary sort of reason for that. But interestingly, engagement on those posts that were put out did increase by about 15%. And also the value that brands took from being in those posts when they were increased by about 21%, which is obviously down to the fact that more people were able to engage with content on social due to the fact that other recreational pursuits or things they might spend their time doing had been reduced by lockdown. And I think that's going to become an increasingly relevant theme, because many of those sort of fans won or fans gained in terms of their interest point will continue to engage with that content going forward as a result.
As teams and leagues and athletes have adapted over the past couple of months, what are some of the key trends that you've seen that fans have really started to engage with?
I think the primary one will always be things that are linked to current affairs and current sort of emotional climates. So, for example, when you have athletes talking about sort of COVID awareness, so for example, the likes of Neymar, and even in recent weeks, athletes talking about sort of anti-racism demonstrations, those are the types of messages that will always carry and should carry significant weight, because they chime with what people are feeling themselves. We saw some trends around historic footage or historic content being used to great effect. The Boston Celtics ran a campaign with their partners at Biofreeze, who typically sponsor the performer of the game category, and they just transferred that back to who the performer of the game was in games from 1976, for example, rather than 2020. And then on top of that, another trend we've seen a lot of people have some good success with is the likes of kind of quizzes and questions about your team, your league, your passion point. And so I think we saw a great example of Emirates working with Real Madrid on something of that nature. So I think a real variety of trends. We could go through many more, but those were some of the highlights that we saw. Are
there any particular brands that you feel have been very successful, or that you've seen be very successful during this time?
I think we should set the tone by saying that look, for most brands, and naturally so, the value that they've seen out of their partnerships on social, we can say from a Hookit perspective has decreased. There are some brands that have kind of bucked that trend. A good example would be Bose, who raised around 2.4 million in value on social through their NFL virtual draft campaign in mid-April. And then also, standout performer for a lot of people, I think, would be Nike and their Play Inside campaign, which just resonated so well with so many people in such a tough and challenging time. So there are people who have seen success in this period, for sure.
As we look towards the future, what long-term changes do you see coming from this period?
I think the importance of social, which was already building and already a key constituent, will be ever more so. I think on top of that, we will see more what I would call kind of performance-based partnerships and sponsorships. So sponsorships and partnerships that are based on the social effectiveness of the individual or the team involved, and so payouts being monitored based on the quality of content that you can put out, and that's why content optimization will continue to be a big theme for the industry. And then finally, I think that we've seen the likes of esports, gaming, that whole sector really taking a huge leap forward by being one of the only sports offerings out there, whether it be the F1 content that's gone out in terms of their virtual racing, or whether it be virtual 24 Hours of Le Mans, both hugely successful events, and I think that we will see more and more of those events continue to rise within the industry.